In a city where glass towers scrape the sky and fortunes move faster than traffic, in Hong Kong's Central District, wealth is not just currency. It is architecture. It is identity. It is leverage. In February 2023, Hong Kong woke up to a headline that felt unreal. A young socialite and mother of 4 had vanished. Within days, the story turned from missing person to something far darker. The name Abby Choi would become etched into the city's collective memory. But beyond the shock and the viral headlines lies a quieter question. Not just what happened, but why? And whether the answer was hiding in plain sight, inside contracts, ownership papers, and a house perched on Kadoorie Hill. On February 21, 2023, Abby Choi was reported missing after failing to pick up her daughter from school. According to Hong Kong police, she had last been seen entering a vehicle driven by her former brother-in-law. In the days that followed, investigators traced her movements to a 3-story village house in Long May, Tai Po. On February 24, police made a discovery inside the property that confirmed the worst fears. The case rapidly escalated from a missing person inquiry to a homicide investigation. By February 25 and 26, multiple arrests were made. Her former husband, Alex Kwong, was apprehended while attempting to leave Hong Kong by speedboat. His father, Kwong Kao, a former police officer, and his mother, Jenny Lee, were arrested shortly after. Her former brother-in-law, Anthony Kwong, was also detained. The charges announced were serious. The father, the mother, and former husband were charged with murder. The brother-in-law faced charges related to assisting an offender. Court proceedings began in Kowloon City Magistrates' Courts before the case was transferred to the High Court. As of the latest publicly available updates, proceedings remain ongoing. The early media coverage focused on the disturbing nature of the discovery. International outlets from the BBC to CNN carried the story. Social media amplified it. Public reaction was immediate and visceral. Yet early narratives often framed it as incomprehensible evil, a monstrous act detached from context. But financial records and property documents told a more structured story, one that pointed toward money, control, and ownership disputes as possible central drivers. At the center of the conflict stood a luxury property in Kadoorie Hill, one of Hong Kong's most prestigious residential areas. According to property filings reported by major news outlets, the flat was purchased in 2019 for approximately 72 million Hong Kong dollars. Although the property was reportedly under Abby Choi's name, members of their former husband's family were residing in it. Reports indicated that Abby had intended to sell the property. This decision appears to have created tension. For the former in-laws, the property represented stability and status. For Abby, it appears to have been one of the several high-value assets under her control. In a city where property ownership often defines social standing, this was not merely real estate, it was power. Court reports from major news outlets said there were arguments about who really controlled the property and how it was set up. There were claims that some people tried to delay or stop the sale. Some reports also mentioned legal tools that made ownership more complicated. The full details of these arrangements have not been fully shared in the court or in public, but prosecutors have said that money and property are key parts of their case. At the same time, news reports suggested that some members of the former husband's family were having financial problems. If that is true, selling the property could have meant losing both their home and their sense of financial security. Money pressure does not excuse violence, but it helps us understand the situation, especially in a place where owning property is closely tied to status and identity, and understanding the context helps explain how conflict can grow. As prosecutors outlined their case, a picture emerged of planning rather than impulse. Allegations described coordination, preparation, and calculated steps designed to conceal wrongdoing, which is critical because criminological research consistently shows that instrumental crimes, those allegedly driven by financial gain, often involve forethought and structured planning rather than spontaneous rage. The prosecution's framing aligns with this pattern. The property sale was reportedly imminent. If confirmed by the courts, that timing may prove significant. When assets worth tens of millions are at stake, disputes can shift from negotiation to desperation. The Hong Kong police force led the investigation, deploying forensic teams, financial analysts, and digital tracking units. Key evidence reportedly include vehicle tracking data, surveillance footage, and financial documentation. The case moved swiftly through magistrate proceedings before being transferred to the High Court due to the gravity of the charges. Bail was denied to the primary suspects. Notably, one accused party have previously served in law enforcement. Media commentary questioned whether institutional familiarity could have influenced planning. Authorities have publicly denied any protective interference, and no official findings have indicated systemic obstruction. Proceedings remain ongoing. Under Hong Kong's legal framework, the presumption of innocence applies until conviction. The global press often emphasized the sensational aspects of the discovery. Reports stated that police encountered a disturbing scene inside the rental property. Investigators alleged that the space had been deliberately arranged for the concealment and processing of human remains. According to Hong Kong police briefings, investigators recovered an electric saw, a meat grinder, a refrigerator containing body parts, and cooking pots with human tissue. While these details were reported and later referenced in court proceedings, headlines leaned heavily on their shock value, amplifying public rage and focusing on the macabre elements rather than the underlying financial conflict unfolding behind the scenes. Yet analysis of the alleged financial motive received far less sustained attention, a gap that significantly shaped how the public understood the case. When violence is framed purely as monstrous unpredictability, society learns nothing. When it is examined through systems of wealth, inequality, property concentration, and status preservation, uncomfortable but necessary conversations begin. Hong Kong's property market is one of the most expensive in the world. Housing is both investment and inheritance. In such an environment, disputes over ownership can become existential. At its core, this case may not simply be about greed. It may be about perceived loss, loss of control, loss of status, loss of economic security. Research in behavioral economics, particularly prospect theory, developed by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in 1979, demonstrates that people tend to react more strongly to potential losses than to equivalent gains. This phenomenon, known as loss aversion, can distort decision-making and heighten risk-taking. When layered with entitlement and financial dependency, it can intensify conflict and narrow moral judgment. If what prosecutors are saying is true, then this was not a sudden burst of anger. It was a planned decision connected to money and property. And that calculation, if true, suggests something deeply unsettling. That in certain conditions, money stops being a tool. It becomes a battlefield. Sooner or later, the courts will decide who is guilty or not. The property and finances will move through formal legal processes. Assets will be accounted for. Ownership will change hands. But legal paperwork cannot answer everything this case showed us. A young woman who once represented wealth and success became part of a serious conflict about control, money, and dependence. This was not random. It followed a pattern. In one of the most expensive cities in the world, property is not just a place to live. It means safety. It means power. It means family inheritance. And when that safety feels threatened, problems can grow quickly. This case is not only about one family. It shows what can happen when money, power, and unclear boundaries mix together. In your family, what does owning something really protect? And if money becomes the main way we decide what matters, what else could be in danger? What are your thoughts on this case? This has been Crime Synth. Until next time.